Happy Thursday, guys. It is June 16th, 2022. My name is Justin Coffin, and this is the 330 Sports Show. We are going to get into a bunch of different topics today. We're going to talk Father's Day is coming up this weekend. We're going to get into just some fun dadisms that don't necessarily have to do with sports, but we'll also go over some of the most famous father-son duos from the sports world. We'll talk about the Cleveland Guardians. Jose Ramirez has been on fire. Actually, if you're watching live, the Guardians are about to start right about now. We're going to get into the NBA Finals. The Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics play Game 6 tonight. Stanley Cup Final started last night. U.S. Open golf is happening right now in Massachusetts. And we're going to go over some different things around the sports world and around pop culture. Mostly stick with sports, but we'll have some good entertaining stuff for you. So just a quick reminder to follow us at the 330 Sports Show and at Youngstown Studio. If you follow my page on especially Instagram and Facebook, I dropped 70 plus dad jokes the other day. Some really funny, some straight up eye rollers, some really lame, but they're all in there for dads or kids or whoever to, kind of put in your pocket over the weekend. If you're at a cookout or something, you can pull out one of those lame dad jokes and you just take all the credit for it. But I thought that would be good for your repertoire going into this weekend. So, Joe, any new dad jokes of late for you?
You know what? Every morning, Bree sends me a new dad joke, so she's been tearing through my good ones lately.
Okay,
They're all being used up, and they're mine. I lay claim to those.
Well, if you have an opportunity, go to the 330 page. There's a bunch there. One of the ones that's kind of topical, I guess you could say today, is it's a Donald Trump joke. And this could be pro or negative Donald Trump, whichever way you want to look at it. I don't like to talk politics, but Trump might be running again in 2024, and he is going to run on the platform of making Americans get rid of. He's going to go with get rid of all shredded cheeses because he wants to make America great again. So,
nice.
So there you go. So there's
Good
a little fun one there. I try. So, okay. Let's first of all start with some famous father-son duos from the sports world. Now, I know there's a whole bunch more than what I listed, but I went and thought of who are some of the most famous father-son duos from the sports world. Now, obviously, we have some local ties here. The one that pops out to me big time, if you were a baseball fan like me with the Indians in the late 90s, early 2000s, Sandy Alomar, Robbie Alomar, the brothers played together, but their father, Sandy Alomar Sr., was also a great, great baseball player. Joe and I were talking about the Manning brothers before the show started, but you have Archie Manning, who is the father, and then Peyton and Eli. Now, Cooper is the brother that didn't play in the NFL. However, his son is one of the highest rated quarterback prospects going into college. I believe he is in the 2023 class, so he is very, very highly rated. Probably going to end up at an Alabama, Georgia, somewhere down south. Ole Miss would obviously make a lot of sense. That's where Eli and the adult father Manning went. So some new ones in the sports world today. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is a big one. His teammate Bo Bichette, his father Bo Bichette Sr. played for the Rockies, and now Bo Bichette is a shortstop with the Toronto Blue Jays.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Your opinion here.
Yeah.
So what do you think it is? Like, NASCAR drivers who all of a sudden their
Mhm.
sons get into racing, and football players and their sons get into football. Is it a genetics thing where they pass down, or is it a culture thing where they just grow up around it so they get mentally good at it?
That's a great question. I think it's both. Honestly, it's both. You have to make it to a certain level. You either have to have the genetics to get to that professional level, football, baseball, basketball, whatever it might be. Now, auto racing is a little different where you don't necessarily need that genetic makeup for physicalness. However, you do need to know what goes into it, all the little nuances. And they're athletes too. Those guys, some of those guys lose 10, 12 pounds during a race and, train very, very hard in their off season. Um, so I think it's a little bit of both. You have to have that IQ that goes along with your sport or the skill that you need to do, but you also need that. You also need to toe the line with athleticism in those major sports because measurables are so important when it comes to especially the big three sports.
I,
So
I I do feel bad for athletes who have kids and then the pressure on them to become whatever their dad
yes.
was. Oh,
Yeah.
that'd be
Well,
awful.
Michael Jordan's son is a perfect example. Like, I know he played basketball, but he, didn't quite live up to the Jordan name. And who could? How could you blame him? LeBron's son right now, he's got two boys, and Bronny, I think, is the oldest one. And it's like, how could he ever live up to the
Well, what if
LeBron
he
James
did? Would
name?
that be
It would.
amazing?
I mean, it would be a great
Because there's no
story.
reason if he has even this much talent, he'd be a shoo-in. There's
Well, and
no
LeBron is already putting those seeds out there of
right.
like, hey, I want to play where my son plays to finish out my career. So that kind of almost is like, is he kind of tipping his hand and saying, hey, if you take my son, if you draft my son, if you pick him up as a free agent, if he doesn't get drafted, I'll come play for your team. Is that kind of like, hey,
And the coach is like, no, I do not want to coach
exactly.
LeBron's kid.
No. Well, and LeBron, can you imagine that?
Oh my
So
God.
no, that would not be ideal. I I have to show you, Joe. Can you put that graphic back one more time? That top graphic on the top left. Okay, that's Marvin Harrison Sr., who was the best wide receiver for Peyton Manning. I think those two have so many touchdowns together, like set the record, or might be right behind Montana and Jerry Rice. I have to look that up, but hit the little boy that is in his arms is now a sophomore at Ohio State and will
Holy
be the
crap.
starting wide receiver for Ohio State University this year, Marvin Harrison Jr. And he's a much bigger dude than his dad. He's about 6'3", 215, and scored 3 touchdowns in the past Rose Bowl as a true freshman. So look out for him. One of the coolest stories was the Griffies when they actually played on the same team with the Seattle Mariners early 90s. That's just a cool story. But like you mentioned, the NASCAR drivers, the Earnhardts, I'm not sure if Kyle Petty's, but like the Andretti's, the dad was a driver, the son was a driver. So that's just really cool. And that's true across all the sports. Hockey, you got the Halls and the Gordie Howells and whatnot. But I think going back to your original point, it's yes, you need the genetic makeup, but you also, if you're around it, you're going to be that much better.
Right.
So that long answer short, I think it's both. What do
And there's
what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. I think, and honestly, I think there's a lot of sort of natural barriers between even good athletes making it all the way that a
Yeah.
lot of people kept out. But when you're a known name, then
Mhm.
it's a lot easier. That if you've got that talent, there's a easier pathway into the majors. More,
No doubt.
yeah,
That's 100% true. And you know, they've paved the way for you and you might have a little bit of an advantage, but when you get there, they don't care who your dad
that's
was.
exactly
You
right.
know, you have to earn your stripes then at
Yeah.
that point
Like,
because
but what about like certain dynasty families like the Watts? Like, what makes such freaks of nature athletes, but they're all freaks of nature?
they
Like,
all eat a lot of Subway from their commercials,
maybe.
I guess.
We
Which
got
is the
Watt
worst sub of
overload.
them all, but
That was a dad
um,
joke. I know, that was bad.
that was good. That was good. I like it. I just wanted to, Joe, can you put this next graphic up? Now, We replayed our Father's Day TV draft. It's going to be hard to see if you're on screen, but some of our favorite characters, the top three were Danny Tanner, Uncle Phil, Mike Brady, top three picks. However, I have since we did this in 2021, I did some addendums for this year's, for some new characters that I didn't. So, Joe, you might agree with some of these. So,
Yes.
I added John Dutton, who's played by Kevin Costner in Yellowstone. Jim Hopper is L's 11's sort of, surrogate father in that show. Marty Bird in Ozark, played by Jason Bateman, is a good one. And then if you have not seen the show Bluey, you probably don't have a little kid, but if you have a little kid and the show Bluey, it is fantastic. Bandit Healer.
I know
Fantastic
nothing
show.
about it.
Well, I mean, Ryan's a little too old for that show
Cartoon?
now.
Is it
Yeah,
like a-
it's a cartoon, but literally, it's kind of has like a little bit of clean adult humor in it. It's really,
Nice.
really good.
See, I
So
love when like Pixar throws in a little bit
Yeah,
of adult stuff.
yeah.
That's great.
and the best thing about these shows, especially for parents, they're 7 minutes long. So
Oh,
there's a
nice.
nice like little transition that you can get in and out of them. Because
Yeah.
I don't like, you got to limit the screen time to
for sure.
here and there. All right, let's go to baseball. As I mentioned, the Guardians or Indians, whatever you want to say, they're actually playing right now in Colorado, in Denver. First win over the Rockies in Denver since 2002. Now, that's kind of a weird stat because they don't play there that often, but kind of a cool note. The Cleveland baseball team there, 31-27, currently sitting in second place in the American League Central, 2.5 games behind the Twins. They've been up and down, back and forth this whole year, but they have won 12 of their last 15 games. So tough stretch coming up with league leading Dodgers. They'll travel to Los Angeles, and then they'll travel to Minnesota, who leads the AL Central. But if you're competitive and you can get back into it, that is right there for you for the taking. So leading the charge is arguably the best player in all of baseball right now for your Cleveland Guardians, the third baseman, Jose Ramirez. He had 4 hits last night. He is batting 307 on the season, 67 for 218. He has 16 home runs, which is up there in the league lead, but he is leading the league in RBIs with 62 through 58 games. So very, very impressive there. He has scored 40 runs, has 11 steals, and also leads or is tied with the league lead with triples with 4. So Jose Ramirez really, really doing some great stuff for the Guardians. We'll talk a little bit more baseball stuff here in a minute, but I want to switch to the NBA Finals. We have game 6 tonight, a possible closeout game for the Golden State Warriors. This would be Golden State's 4th NBA title in 8 years. Obviously, they have not won since since a few years back. They won the 3 titles against Cleveland in 15, 17, and 18. Cleveland got the one done in 16, and then they probably would have won again in 19. However, Durant goes down. Klay Thompson went down with an ACL and an Achilles, respectively. So the last 6 games, the last 5 games have been all over the board. And I have some interesting notes from these series as a whole. So these were just something that caught my eye that was very interesting. So Golden State looks to close out Boston tonight in Boston. So that would win the title for them. Now, previous to the last game, previous to game 5, the Warriors and the Celtics combined total score was 422 for the Warriors to 421 to the Celtics. So very, very close. And both teams had made exactly 64 3-pointers. This is a really cool stat. Andrew Wiggins. So Andrew Wiggins, former number 1 pick of the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs later flipped him, got Kevin Love back in that trade. But Andrew Wiggins has played 622 career games. That's regular and postseason games combined, and never had more than 11 rebounds in his career. In the past 2 games, he's had 16 rebounds and 13 rebounds, respectively. So that's just a really, really cool stat there. And the Celtics are 1-7 this season when they commit 16 or more turnovers, and they are 13-2 when they keep the turnovers under that amount. So when they're under control with the ball. So that's the name of the game. And you can ask any basketball coach. You don't turn the ball over, gives you a much better percentage chance to win. So that is the name of the game. And finally, Steph Curry, in a win in game 5, went 0 for 9 from the 3-point line, which brought an end to a streak for him of 233 postseason and regular season games. So to put that in perspective, that's 2.5 full seasons of basketball in which he made at least one 3-pointer. And that streak finally came to an end on, I believe that was Monday night. So game 6 tonight. I actually picked Golden State to win in 6 games. So if it hits tonight, I would be correct in that. So we'll see what happens. Boston looked like the better team early on. The Warriors have looked like the better team the last 2 games here. All right, real quick. I'm just going to check in. We're not going to do a whole lot of stuff with this, but next week, it's fast. It's not like the NFL, but once the NBA finals are over, the NBA draft is the next week. So the NBA draft will be next week, and the Cavs will pick 14th. So there's a lot of people that like the top 4: Jabari Smith out of Auburn, Paulo Banchero out of Duke, Jaden Ivey, the guard out of Purdue, and Chet Holmgren, the forward out of Gonzaga. Now, this is an interesting stat I came across. I heard, I want to give credit to, it was Bill Simmons, and it was, oh man, I can't think of his name, but Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo were talking about this, and they said, when was the last time a white American-born player was drafted first in the NBA draft? You'd have to go all the way back to 1977. Chet Holmgren has the possibility. He's a forward, 6'10", lanky guy from Gonzaga, has the opportunity to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. A lot of people, he's a consensus. He's definitely going to go in the top 4, but a lot of people like him at number 1. That is Orlando, but I could see him probably going to the OKC Thunder. But since 1977, no white American-born player has been drafted number 1, which was just kind of an interesting stat to me. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll check in next week, and we will see what the Cavs do with that. Also in Denver, happening last night, the Colorado Avalanche take a 1-0 series lead with a 4-3 overtime win over the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay is the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions. The Avalanche have a absolutely loaded roster, so this should be good. I'm a very, very casual hockey watcher. I don't watch a whole lot of hockey, but when I watch it, it's very, very entertaining. And I threw this out there on social media. It's kind of cool because both of these mascots or team names, whatever you want to call them, first of all, they're both weather related, Avalanche and Lightning, and they both don't end with the letter S. And if you go through almost every single sport, every single mascot, I would say 90% or higher end with an S. So, just take your Cleveland teams, the Guardians, the Cavaliers, the Browns, the Buckeyes, and go through your Pittsburgh teams, the Steelers, the Pirates, the Penguins. So it's kind of neat to, it's just kind of a little nuance that it's not, there's not too many of these team nicknames around, but I just thought that was kind of an interesting side note there in the series. Now, we are going to switch now to the Billionaires Club. So a tip of the cap to these 2 gentlemen who maybe you've heard of before. LeBron James from right up the road, down 76 in Akron, becomes the first NBA billionaire, excuse me. Don't want to short him as a couple zeros there, but a first billionaire while an active player. Now, Michael Jordan is currently a billionaire, but obviously that was after he retired from playing. Tiger Woods, within the week, also became the second billionaire athlete in that club. So just kind of some interesting stuff there. LeBron James, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, all billionaires, and the first three of their kind. They're only three of their kind. So I think as contracts go up, players become more business savvy, start investing, doing other things. I think we're going to have a lot more, people in this to join them in that club. But billionaire is something special, and it takes a lot of savviness because a lot of players earn a lot of money over their career, but how well do they invest it, save it? Do good with it, whatever you want to say. And, obviously Tiger and LeBron and Michael Jordan have done those things. So, Tiger Woods, interesting note. Joe, I'm going to just tell you, he's made $1.7 billion over the course of his career, from playing golf to advertisements. Take a guess how much percentage wise of that 1.7 is from golf.
Half?
10%.
Woo!
10% is from golf. And obviously, without golf, he doesn't get those other endorsements.
Right.
So, I guess you could say all of it's from golf, but, the Buicks and whatever else he's advertising for, all that money coming in. Nike obviously is a huge one.
Well, I just put it in perspective. He's grinding it at 160 million to get the whole 1.6 billion.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
He toughed it out on that.
He really did. He really did. So that's really interesting. Obviously, we know LeBron just said he wants to own an NBA franchise in Las Vegas. We know what he's doing with the school up the street. He's got marketing companies. He's got multimedia companies, movies he's involved with. So these guys do more than, they wear more than one hat. So, I just think that's cool. And, we see like guys like Elon Musk, who I know you're a big fan of, but he's not just doing Tesla. He's involved with a ton of other things. And I think when you branch out like that, some are going to fail, some are going to hit, but when you know what you're doing, I think, more are going to hit than not. So
there is a certain weirdness. And I even watched, like we were talking about the legacy in families where, ex players become coaches. And then if you get to a certain point, then you own teams. And then so, there's always a one up from where you came from.
Yep, exactly. And it's like, I think the more you're around something, you can either go one of two ways. You can totally go against it and do something else, or you totally dive deep and go deeper and deeper and deeper. Like you said, like these guys that, our athletes become coaches, or these athletes become general managers, or they become owners eventually. And it's really interesting to see, because that's kind of them passing on their knowledge to the younger generation as well. So kind of a neat little, like, homage or whatever to the people that helped them along the way too.
Now, what do you think the weirdest one is, where an ex, athlete, they open a business and it just left field, like something
that's a good question.
Never expect? Restaurants are probably the ones that are weirdest. I mean,
Right.
yes, everybody likes food and all, but restaurants are so hard, low margin, so difficult.
I would say if I were doing that, probably the safest bet would be to be a franchise owner.
Sure.
And then you could just buy a bunch of franchises, whether it's car dealerships, pizza places, that stuff doesn't go out of business. Real estate.
But can you imagine though, like the carousel of business opportunities that like show up at your door, like your own liquor, your own restaurant, your own, think about how many things people pitch at you.
I could only imagine. And these guys, I'm sure, have teams of people that are, you got to get through 3 levels of people just to talk to the top.
Oh, yeah.
So, but that's very, very interesting. And we'll have to look into that, like some of the weirdest business. And I'm sure there's been a lot of guys that have failed. Yeah. And I'm sure, and there's probably some horror stories out there, but I know, especially in the NFL, I know the NBA, NBA for a while, and I guess maybe put it along the lines of a race thing, whereas a lot of players came in the league without growing up with very much, and you get that, and it's like a lottery ticket, and they teach you how to spend, how to invest, and I think the NBA, the NFL, and Major League Baseball has done a really good job handling these younger players and teaching them the ins and out of, hey, you're going to be approached and don't have an entourage and, this and that. Hey, if you want to go buy your mom a house, or if you want to go buy your dad that car he's always wanted, that's one thing. But don't be dropping like, $500,000 at a club and, this and that. And,
Lamborghinis, cocaine, and 68 massages. That's what I would do.
Oh boy. Okay. We're moving on. Tip of the cap to Belmont Stakes winner Mo Donegal last weekend, and his owner Mike. I believe it's Repoli. I hope I pronounced that right, but he is the owner of that horse that finished not just first, but he also had the second place finisher, which was Nest. Which was also a filly, which, if you remember, a filly is a female horse. So pretty cool there for him. I want to give another tip of the cap. And as much as I don't like this team, this was a really cool stat, and I wanted to share it with you. To two Houston Astro pitchers. Last night, the Astros beat the Texas Rangers 9-2, but that was kind of secondary. So Astro pitcher Luis Garcia struck out Nathaniel Lowe, Ezekiel Duran, and Brad Miller on 9 pitches. How many strikes does it take to strike out a batter? 3. So all 9 pitches were strikes. All 3 batters struck out. That is what's called an immaculate inning. We've talked about this once before on the show. In the 7th inning, another Astro pitcher who actually the Indians last year traded, Phil Maton, they got Miles Straw back in that deal, saw the same 3 hitters come up to the plate. He also struck them out on 9 pitches. It's the first time in Major League history with 2 immaculate innings have occurred the same day. Not just the same day, it was the same game against the same team against the same hitters. So I thought that was pretty amazing there. Just, baseball is one of those that has so many weird stats. Like this guy hits 280 on Sundays when the sky is kind of cloudy. It's like there's weird stats like that, but immaculate innings are really, really kind of cool. 9 pitches, 3 outs, all 3 strikeouts. Let's go to the Atlanta Braves now. The Atlanta Braves, tip of the cap to them. They have won 14 games in a row. They are now 37-24. And this kind of came out of nowhere. Obviously they did win the World Series last year, but they were sitting at 23-24. They go on a 14-game winning streak. And ironically enough, they are still 4 games back of first place in the NL East. So to check on those division leaders, let's go over to them. The New York Yankees are just running away with the American League East. They are 46-16. They lead the American League East by 9 games. The Minnesota Twins currently lead the Cleveland Guardians by 2.5 games. They're sitting at 37-28. And then the Houston Astros, who we already mentioned, are 39-24. They lead Texas by 9.5 games. So the Minnesota, Cleveland, Chicago should be an interesting one in the Central, but those other 2 races don't look very close.
What's the Yankees payroll?
It's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot.
Thought that
they are still not. They're still only the 3rd highest payroll in all the majors, though. I believe it's the New York Mets, their counterparts across the city, and the LA Dodgers. So very, markets. Very, very big markets, very high payrolls for very good teams. Nonetheless, you get what you pay for, I guess. But
I know our young Indians team are looking really good.
They're looking good of late. And, I have my concerns about them, but they are definitely starting to hit the ball, and the pitching's starting to come around slowly. So
20% of their payroll.
Exactly. Which if we shift to the National League, the New York Mets are 41 and 23. Those the highest payroll. They are leading the Atlanta Braves, who we just talked about, by 4 games. The St. Louis Cardinals. This is a close one. 37 and 28. They lead the Milwaukee Brewers by a game and a half. And the Dodgers and the San Diego Padres are tied. By not by record, but by percentage at 39 and 23 in the NL West. So that should be a really, really good finish to the season. Pittsburgh Steeler note here. Minka Fitzpatrick, the safety for the Steelers, they traded away a first-round pick a few years ago, got Minka Fitzpatrick back. He is an all-pro safety. He now becomes the highest paid player at his position in the NFL, a 4-year deal worth roughly about $18.6 million per year. 36 million of that is guaranteed. So he is a very, very good player. And the Steelers have 3 great players on the defensive side of the ball with Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, and Minka Fitzpatrick. So very, very good defense over there in Pittsburgh. But do they have the rest of the pieces to compete in the AFC North? That is for a later show. We will talk about that in a future podcast. Now, the U.S. Open, the golf tournament, started this morning. This is a very extremely awkward situation because, first of all, this is taking place in Brookline, Massachusetts. However, the Live golf tournament, the PGA Tour, there's a lot of awkwardness. There's a lot of animosity going on right now. Basically, the Live golf tournament has been purchasing guys. They offered Tiger Woods over $900 million to come be a part of this. He turned it down. He turned it down. But what's 900 million when you got 1.7 billion? Other players, John Rahm. Some players have been very critical of this. Now, Joe, let me ask you this.
Sure.
Now, the PGA Tour is sort of set up as a you're earning your paycheck, whereas if you go to this Live tournament, if you come in last place, I think it's 120 grand for the last place guy. In the PGA Tour, I'm sure it's significantly less than that. There's also no cuts. So usually a PGA Tour work goes Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but only half the field makes it, that Saturday and Sunday. The other half is cut. Now, what's your opinion on some of these guys? Are they making the right decision by staying with the PGA Tour, or it's money in hand, go over there and make your money? So I can see it both ways. What do you think?
See, I'm going to change it over to football. I love that when there's a competing, league like the XFL or one of those other ones, because I think it opens it up to more players, and the more players you get on the field, the better, teams you can put together from it. So I think it helps the sport overall. Now it fractures those fans. And if you're a sport that doesn't get viewership anyhow, how's a network going to pay for rights to a sport when it's half of the loyalty goes in a different direction? It's rough.
Now, a big dramatic thing with this is the Live tournament is kind of backed by Saudi Arabia, a lot of people over there. So that's where it's getting a little finicky. Now, I know they played in London. I'm not sure where their next tournament is, but, obviously human rights and things like that. The Saudi government hasn't been the nicest, let's say, with that. That goes along with, should the Olympics be in China, because the way they treat those people.
Every sport has danced with this. The couple of the NBA games, a couple of the NFL games, they were flirting with Europe and China.
Yeah, right.
But it never quite works out because we are the fan base. We are the ones that pay the bills. So that you're right. If Saudi Arabia is going to extract some of this American dollars and then pull it overseas, it will turn on that pretty quick here.
I have heard they have upwards of $450 billion for over the next 10 years to invest in this league.
All right. Yeah.
So
they can hang in there quite a while.
I'm a little bit, first of all, that kind of money is just, that's $500 billion. I'm sure it's a lot of oil money. I'm sure it's a lot of blood money in there, whatever you want to say. But that's a very interesting, scary thing. So
what if this?
we'll see.
And let me change this around on you a little bit. So what if the other sports did like golf, where depending on how you performed in a game is what you were paid for that game. So that guaranteed money or big contracts to just play the season changes game to game, where everybody has to put up, or else you might get last place pay if you suck that day.
That's interesting. That's interesting, because a lot of times now contracts are based on what you've done versus, you know, like David Njoku, he just got paid in the NFL for what they think he's going to do. So they're trying. So, you know, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of, it's not just a black and white. There's a lot of different aspects that go into some of these contracts. But I like the idea of you have a base salary. I think that's really cool, and you're incentivized based on the way you play.
Yeah, and
but
think about some lower playing positions, how much more performance you get out of them. If they were the highest performing person, they get top tier, like number one performing paycheck. So you can have one guy getting $1 million where he would never be able to claim that.
Let me make one more counterpoint. Right. As a former teacher, this was a topic there for a while, which teachers hated.
Okay.
Now, performance-based pay based on standardized tests.
Okay.
Now, that was a huge thing for teachers. They're like, well, what if you get all of the kids that are the highest performing, you know? Or what if you're in the classroom where, you know, maybe there's a lot of single families and the kids have trouble getting to school and those kids don't do so well academically. Like, why should I be punished financially for something that I can't do anything about? So do you see what I'm saying with that? Like, that's a very slippery slope there. So for teaching, luckily, I never had to deal with that, but what say you?
Yeah, but you know what I like about having it be performance based is that if you end up getting last place pay, you're not stuck there. The next game you can come back and put up different numbers.
True.
There would have to be a nice fair way of figuring out, you know, a defensive player versus an offensive player. It's harder to say that the defensive player outperformed him, like on what metrics.
That's very interesting. Yes.
Standardized test back to that question.
And I guess maybe you base that on peer performance. And that's kind of what they do with the franchise tag. They take the top 5 highest salaries, and then if you're franchise tagged, you know, that's your contract base. So like, you know, whatever the top 5 receivers in the league are, you know, if you're good enough and your team wants to hold on to you, but they don't want to extend you long term, they'll say, well, for 1 year, it's a short term, you're going to make more money, but you know, in the long term, those guys want longer deals with more guaranteed money. So
think about how many busts like happen where it cost them non-bust money, but if they would have had a performance deal, that there would be no such thing as a bust.
Exactly.
You hire him, doesn't do well, it doesn't make much, and he washes out of the system.
Great points. Yeah. Great points. Great points. All right. We have to talk about Baker. I mean, we have to. So obviously, let me just put this out there. Baker Mayfield is not going to play another snap for the Cleveland Browns. I know, you know, there's a lot of people out there that love Baker, rightfully so. He did a lot of great things. I think Joel Bitonio said it best the other day. Joel Bitonio is the longest tenured Brown, and he said, let's not forget about what this guy has done for the city of Cleveland. You know, ended the losing streak, got him to the playoffs, beat the Steelers in the playoffs, that, you know, whatnot. He gave it all to the city of Cleveland. Now, he, unfortunately, whether it was his own fault or not, injuries or whatever, he is just not lived up to being the number 1 pick. He's thrown the most interceptions since he's come in the league in 2018. He's done a lot of great things, but he's also struggled too. And, you know, when you can go out and get a better player, you know, off the field issues aside, you try to make everything happen that you can. So I will just say this, like, I appreciate what Baker Mayfield has done for the Browns, but that ship has sailed, that bridge is burned, whatever you want to say. He is not going to play another snap for the Cleveland Browns. Now, I put this on there. I put a wag of the finger because I am so tired of the continued Baker Mayfield speculation, but there's never actually anything of substance. So the latest report as of yesterday and into this morning was there's urgency from the Panthers to complete a Baker Mayfield trade. so they can get him in for camp so he can learn the material, learn the system, and obviously, however much of the contract the Browns are willing to eat, the higher the draft compensation they'll get in return. Now, the most interesting thing about this is, who do the Browns play week 1? The Carolina Panthers. So, I'm sure if this happens, this is going to be the biggest story in football for at least the next news cycle the next day. But Baker Mayfield, if he goes to Carolina, will be huge, huge news. Joe, thoughts? We've talked so much about Baker Mayfield. I feel like it's a little bit redundant here and there, but
well, I think honestly, what you said the last time we talked about this was the deeper they get into the season, the more value they're going to get out as guys start getting injured and whatever.
Yeah.
And I think sort of like this is a leverage event where I think because they've waited, it's even becoming more immediate. But the stuff that I'm hearing about what they're willing to trade for doesn't seem right. Like they're doing, I think from Carolina, were they going to trade a quarterback for a quarterback in that? That didn't make sense to me.
It doesn't. And, you're basically trading one average quarterback for another maybe below average quarterback. I think Baker Mayfield's an upgrade over Sam Darnold, who they went first and third in that draft respectively, but Sam Darnold has stunk, but both teams, that is a risk they took by picking up the 5th-year option. Actually, Darnold was with the Jets when that happened before he was traded last year. The Browns don't want Darnold.
Yeah.
You got, obviously we'll see what happens with Deshaun Watson. Jacoby Brissett's there. Josh Dobbs is there. They have guys kind of in that same athletic mold that can move in and out of the pocket. Sam Darnold is a statue back there. He wouldn't survive.
But it doesn't feel like anything's like is breaking this deal. I think getting rid of Baker, yes. Eating most of his salary, yes. Like I don't know what more could come into this deal that would make because nobody's going to pay $18 million. There's not a single person.
Agreed. Right. Yeah. So I think best case scenario, you half it. And we'll see. But this is, a lot of times where there's smoke, there's fire. And there was some smoke this morning. All right. Final thing I want to get you out of here on. Now, Barstool Cleveland put this together. It was a table of Cleveland athletes. Now, Joe, table 1 is LeBron James, Myles Garrett, CeCe Sabathia. Table 2, kind of some Cleveland legends: Bernie, Jim Thome, Mark Price. Table 3, you have more of your fun characters, if you want to say it like that. You got Lindor, you got Kyrie, you got Johnny Football. Table 4, you kind of have your hardworking, just cool guys. You got Nick Chubb, you got Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and you got Kenny Lofton. Table 5 is kind of your villainous table. Your Ben Roethlisberger, your Steph Curry, your Art Modell. And then table 6, just some, whatever you think of Omar Vizquel now, but just some good, lovable Cleveland athletes over their time.
Lovable. You got, I see what you did.
Actually, no, I didn't mean to do that. No pun intended. But very good. Kevin Love, Joe Thomas, and Omar Vizquel. So, Joe, you have 6 tables to choose from. You're the new kid in school in the Cleveland cafeteria. Which one of those tables are you sitting at and why?
All right, I'm sitting at table 2 because all 3 of those guys, man, I loved them growing up. They were my heroes. So, and what do you say? That was Thome back there?
That is Jim Thome, Bernie Kosar, and Mark Price.
Mark Price, yeah, that's my table. Okay. And we're sharing stories, and I want to hear all about it. They were just my heroes.
Now
I'm going to invite Lofton to our table, by the way.
Yeah, well, Kenny Lofton's by far my favorite
for sure
player of all time for the Indians. Now, let me ask you this. Which table would be your last table you'd want to sit at?
5. I couldn't sit with number 7.
Okay, yeah.
Ever.
To me, more villainous than Roethlisberger, though, Art Modell. And I know he's long since gone, but, and actually, if I like Steph Curry. I think Steph Curry is likable. If it was Draymond Green, I'd be like, hell no, I'm not sitting there. But I think Table 3 would be a heck of a lot of fun, though. None of those guys play for the Cleveland teams anymore, but Lindor with the Mets,
I'm drinking with Johnny.
Johnny, I mean, that's the party table. That's the table you want to go out with.
Yep.
But some very interesting stuff there. So I thought I'd pass that along. Saw that online this past weekend. So, Joe, before we go, we were talking about a show we might possibly do next week.
Yeah.
So it's in the works. Nothing's official yet, but do you want to tell people what we might?
Yeah, see, we're going to head over. We're going to do some cooperatives with Bogies. And if those are familiar, they have a amazing facility in a Southern Park mall. It used to be Jillian's, and they converted it to a
and the
golf
bunker
theme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the bunker. A bar, restaurant up front, and then they've got simulators and some, stuff to sharpen your practice game.
Very cool facility
for golf. But anyway, they're going to do a bunch of events. So they kind of invited us to host some of our shows there and bring some stuff to them. So they invited us to come down and do a live broadcast for a couple of our shows.
Awesome. So look for that next week. We'll put that out on our social media pages, but that might be a fun little partnership if we can get that going in the future. So just wanted to wish everyone a happy Father's Day this weekend. Enjoy your weekend, and we will talk to you on Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content, and